Japan, a country where order and discipline are not just rules but have become a part of cultural identity and a source of national pride. Yet, even in this land of meticulousness, sudden social upheavals have shaken the foundation of the community, exposing deep cracks in an era marked by global cultural clashes. Our story begins in August 2025 at a place as familiar as can be, a McDonald's restaurant, in an effort to bring joy to children. McDonald's Japan launched a campaign offering limited edition Pokemon trading cards with every Happy Meal. A bright idea, a small gift for childhood. But that joy was crushed the moment it began to blossom. A wave of Chinese speculators swarmed in, turning the cozy shop space into a chaotic battlefield. They weren't there to eat. They came to hunt. Their sole target was rare trading cards, items that could be resold at a high price. The store's policy is very clear. Each customer is allowed to purchase a maximum of 5 meals. However, rules seem to exist only to be broken. A Chinese man brazenly demanded to buy 40 meals. When a polite Japanese staff member explained the limit, he casually replied, "It's 5 meals per person, right? I have 8 people here." The atmosphere grew tense and heavy. The patience and politeness typical of Japanese seemed to have been pushed to their absolute limit. At that moment, a nearby Japanese guest half jokingly, half seriously remarked, cutting straight to the heart of prevailing helplessness, "Forget it. They're Chinese after all. What can we really do?" The entire room fell silent. That statement, though delivered with a touch of humor, revealed a bitter prejudice that was steadily growing. But the peak of the outrage didn't stop there. What enraged the local people to the utmost was the scene after the speculators got what they wanted. They tore open the food boxes, took out the meal cards, and then, without a moment's hesitation, threw all the still-hot food into the trash. This ruthless waste created a painfully stark contrast. Just outside, Japanese children were sobbing uncontrollably. Their dream of owning Pokemon cards had been stolen by the bottomless greed of adults. The incident quickly became a media focal point. McDonald's Japan was forced to issue a formal apology and hurriedly ended the promotional campaign early. Just as the Pokemon frenzy was settling down, another storm, also believed to have originated from China, erupted even more fiercely. This time, the stage of the tragedy is not a fast food restaurant, but an old 7-story apartment building in Itabashi Ward, Tokyo. This building, over 40 years old, is home to many low-income families and elderly people living alone, with stable rent prices of about $480 to $550 per month. Then, in January 2025, a cold notice was sent to the households. Starting in August, the rent will skyrocket to 2.5 times the current amount, a shocking blow from above. What made the situation even more tense was when the media got involved and discovered that the new owner of the building was a company based in Liaoning Province, China. Immediately, the case was labeled as Chinese landlord, igniting a firestorm of public outrage. A collective protest by tenants erupted. Japanese media pointed out that the country's laws strictly protect tenants' rights. Landlords cannot arbitrarily raise rent unreasonably or evict residents without valid reasons. For many people, especially those over 70 years old, this is no longer a matter of money. It's a life or death struggle. They simply cannot bear such a sudden and harsh change. However, the new owner remained completely unyielding. Then, a highly unusual incident occurred. The building's only elevator suddenly broke down severely, and it was announced that repairs would take several months. This is considered a form of psychological torture directly targeting the elderly and frail living on the upper floors. Every trip up and down has now become a torment. Public opinion believes this is a deliberate act, a cruel tactic designed to force tenants to leave voluntarily out of exhaustion and despair. The incident has gone beyond the boundaries of a single neighborhood. Japanese netizens are calling the new homeowners demons, accusing them of lacking respect for the rule of law. YouTube videos with titles like "Cruel Chinese Homeowners Spark Outrage Across Japan" have attracted millions of views. The situation has become so serious that it has reached both Congress and the Prime Minister's office. Lawmakers have had to hold emergency sessions to discuss the impact of foreign investment on the housing market and are calling for stricter regulations. Finally, Under intense public pressure, the Chinese owner was forced to withdraw the decision to raise prices and agreed to repair the elevator. But this victory came with a bitter taste. The wound was too deep. 40% of the households, overwhelmed by hardship, had already accepted leaving their homes. From the chaos in a fast food restaurant to the tragedy in an old apartment complex, two seemingly unrelated stories are connected by an invisible thread. Both have struck at the most sensitive nerve of Japanese society, the awareness of rule compliance and public order. And both have been magnified many times over by the Chinese backgrounds of people involved. If the two stories above highlight conflicts in trade and civil regulations, what follows will extend this clash into the realm of cultural collisions in the skies. On a Thai airline flight, a group of Chinese passengers loudly demanded that the crew communicate with them in Chinese. "Speak Chinese. Find someone who can speak Chinese," a woman shouted, then emphasized a familiar slogan: "We Chinese are not easy to bully." The international online community has strongly criticized this behavior. One commenter said, "Why do they always have to say things like, 'we must unite,' and 'we are not easy to bully'? How deeply ingrained is this inferiority complex?" This is not an isolated incident. In February 2025 at Singapore Airport, a Chinese woman loudly banged on the restroom door and insulted the flight crew, saying, "Why don't you foreigners speak Chinese?" While the plane was taxiing, the flight was forced to make an emergency stop. The statistics paint an alarming picture. According to the Civil Aviation Administration of China, from 2020 to 2025, over 70% of in-flight disturbances involved Chinese passengers. The International Air Transport Association also reported that the percentage of disruptive Chinese passengers increased from 15% in 2019 to 25% in 2024. These actions have helped ignite a global wave of anti-China sentiment. In 2025, the European Parliament had to discuss restricting tourist visa issuance for Chinese citizens. The New York Times commented that this is no longer a personal issue, but has become a national image crisis. So the question is, why? Could this just be a coincidence? No, this is not a coincidence. The underlying causes have been accumulating and building up over a long period of time. First, in terms of culture and psychology, Chinese society has long emphasized collectivism and the face culture. In confined spaces, even a minor collision can easily escalate into a battle to defend one's dignity. Tolerance is seen as weakness, while a strong reaction is viewed as a way to preserve face. The wolf pack mentality, encouraged in recent years, has led many to equate aggression with patriotism. Second, and perhaps more fundamentally, it lies in the education and propaganda system. This system continuously promotes China-centered ideas, portraying Mandarin as a superior language. Textbooks rarely emphasize respect for multiculturalism. Instead, they focus on slogans about national rejuvenation and cultural confidence. As a result, many Chinese people abroad carry an implicit belief that the whole world should speak Chinese. The third cause stems from a historical and cultural rupture. Traditional Chinese culture values humility, etiquette, and reverence for heaven and earth. However, the Chinese Communist Party promotes the mindset of fearless of heaven and earth. After decades of glorifying a rough, unruly culture, the daily habits of the people have been reshaped, resulting in individuals exhibiting lowly behavior. Artist Tran Dan Ton once argued that the collective memory of the Chinese people today is shaped by the legacy of the Cultural Revolution. This is the root cause of what society as a whole must acknowledge as significant issues with the overall level of public education and awareness. Finally, we cannot overlook the role of the propaganda machine. Films like Wolf Warrior have created an image of the Chinese as people who cannot be bullied. Television programs continuously promote the idea that Chinese people go out into the world and the whole world must tremble. Looking back at past incidents, what should have been a minor issue related to service or language escalated into a conflict over attitude and honor, all because of a preconceived psychological framework. Outside observers point out that the Chinese government often talks about 3 stages: standing up, getting rich, and becoming strong. But if becoming strong means causing chaos on the international stage, isn't that like putting the cart before the horse? What truly makes a nation rise is not outbursts of anger, but elegance and a dignified demeanor. That is genuine strength, a power that comes from civilization and respect.